The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't
The
care.
BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the Sports Guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. It's Wednesday. It's Smart Guy Wednesday. We have Zach Lowe from Grantland coming on a little bit later. And right now, the creator of FootballOutsiders.com, our friend Aaron Schatz. What's happening?
Smart Guy Wednesday. I'm always glad to be on Smart Guy Wednesday.
Yeah, Smart Guy Wednesday.
I try
This
to
could be a
avoid
gimmick.
Idiot Saturday.
You got to get David Cho to sell Smart Guy Wednesdays. Hey, let's talk Seattle Seahawks. Holy mackerel, their rankings look good in the DVOA this week.
Yeah,
4, 5, and 3.
You know what's really amazing is that they look really good when they really should be 6 and 6.
Right.
If not for what do you call it? The Golden Mary or whatever.
Well, it was the Fail Mary, or it was the
Refpocalypse is what I prefer to
Golden
call it.
Gate. Yeah, there's a bunch
the
of
play
them.
that ended the lockout.
I will say this though: you say they should be 6 and 6, but you could also make a case they could easily be 10 and 2.
Right, but I'm not saying had they made certain plays they would be
Yep.
6 and 6. I'm saying had the refs known what they were doing, they would be 6 and 6.
Well, you obviously haven't seen the conspiracy photos of
But they
both
are.
feet on the ground.
They are really good. They are 4th right now. They're 4th in
Yeah.
our ratings, and they are the only team in the league that is in the top 10 in all. There are 2 teams in the league that are in the top 10 of all 3 phases: Seattle and Denver. But Seattle is the only team in the top 6. They're 5th in offense, 6th in defense, 3rd in special teams. So they
Right.
are really well rounded. I've got to give it to Fredo. He's really put it together here.
Yeah, well, Fredo needed the kick in the butt that I gave him last week when I abandoned ship in the car. It was my last gasp with the Seahawks. I had to try to reverse jinx him.
Now,
But
listen,
you mentioned,
look, obviously there's a couple of asterisks here because a lot of this is their very fine secondary. They're the best defense in the league against opposing number 1 receivers. What happens if they have to play without Browner and Sherman once those appeals get nagged by the league? And what happens if that runs into the playoffs?
right.
It's probably
Well-
better for them to drop the appeals right now so the team can try to get in the playoffs without them because they do not want to miss a playoff game.
Well, can't they they could possibly drag that along so it's just the first 4 games of next year. I wouldn't mess with the team they have now.
I have no idea how the rules work, but if they
Yeah.
don't think that's possible, it would be better for them to. I think they have a better chance of making the playoffs without those guys and winning a Super Bowl with them than they would have only missing those guys for the last 2 weeks, but then having to miss them for the first 2 playoff games.
Well, that's a good point. So you have them. They're the 5th-ranked offense, the 6th-ranked defense, and the 3rd-ranked special teams. And I always like looking at your rankings because it's very rare to see a team that's good in all 3 of those phases. Like, for instance, the Bears are 26th offensively, 1st defense, 4th special teams. The Pats are 1st offense, 18 defense, 2nd special teams. To have that kind of balance, and it kind of lends itself to what we've watched all year. Like the Seahawks have been unbeatable at home, Golden Gate play aside. On the road, they've been in every game, and every game they've played has come down to the last 5 minutes, and they've won 2, and I think they've lost 5. But
and I personally like balance. I like teams with balance because Bill Belichick's philosophy has always been find what your opponent can't stop and do that. Find what your opponent can't do on offense and force him to do that. The more balanced your team, the easier it is to attack your opponent's weaknesses because 1 week you can go run, the next week pass, 1 week you can emphasize pass defense, the next week run defense, depending on who you put in the box. The Patriots don't actually have a team that's that flexible on defense, but Seattle has a team that's that flexible all around. Their run defense isn't spectacular, but it's reasonable, and their offense is good all around.
And we needed to see two things from them. And I was giving up hope. I actually thought they were going to lose to Chicago just because they were due to have a bad game. But we needed to see Russell Wilson really come through in a road game. Because at some point he's going to have to play in the playoffs. He's going to have to play on the road at some point. And then we needed to see their defense make a stop in the fourth quarter of a road game when they needed it. And that's something that's killed them the whole season. They finally started making stops. And now they can basically run the slate. They have that San Francisco game at home, which is the key game, but 3 of their last 4 at home. Very real scenario here that this team could be not only the NFC West champ, but possibly even the 2 seed if some stuff breaks. I mean, that would be incredible, right?
Right. Again, a lot of it depends on, no one player or 2 players makes a huge amount of difference unless it's a quarterback. But those 2 players would make about as big a difference as you could imagine from 2 players who aren't quarterbacks.
Yeah.
The only thing worse would be losing like your top 2 pass rushers or something.
Right.
And if they don't have those guys for the San Francisco game, that's going to be a real problem. But yeah, we have them right now with a 87% chance of making the playoffs in the Football Outsiders playoff odds. They have a 15% shot at the 2 seed, 12% at the 3 seed, 4% at the 4, 24% at the 5, and 31% at the 6. If people want to read all those odds, by the way, just go to footballoutsiders.com/stats/playoff odds.
I'm surprised it's only 15% because if the Patriots beat the Niners and Seattle takes care of business in the other 3 games they have other than the Niners, which they'll be favored heavily in each game, then it basically comes down to that Niners game.
Yeah, but
they'd be home.
San Francisco has Miami, the Patriots, Seattle, and Arizona. So that's 2 easy wins for them. So let's say they lose to the Patriots, which is by far not a guarantee, but let's say they do. Then it still comes down to that one game.
Right.
But if they beat the Patriots, it doesn't come down to that one game because they're probably going to beat Miami and Arizona.
True. But I would say if I had to bet on this, I think I'd bet on the Seahawks to win this division.
I will say you'll love this. We do special Super Bowl matchups at the bottom of the playoff odds page, and we give a 5.3% chance of the Pete Carroll reunion special.
Oh, my God.
Patriots-Seahawks.
Oh, my God. I'd have to dust off like every Pete Carroll column I wrote for my old website.
You wrote some really good ones.
Yeah, I remember.
Back in the ESPN days, dude.
I had one. It was a whole fake Austin Powers script. I think it was a fake Who Wants to Be a Millionaire episode with Pete Carroll.
I mean, I don't remember how hard you were on him versus Bobby Greer. I think looking back on that time, now seeing what Carroll has done since, I think maybe we were all not hard enough on Bobby Greer for the way he bought the groceries.
It's a great point. But also following Parcells and what Parcells meant to save football in New England.
He did.
We'd never had a real coach before. And
I tell that to people who tell me about, Patriots fans all jumped on the bandwagon in 2001. I'm like, no. Patriots fans all jumped on the bandwagon in 1994 when Parcells and Bledsoe in their second year made it to the playoffs. That was the bandwagon season.
Yeah, and you could even say the Squish the Fish in '85. That was the original bandwagon jump. Then it went away. There's been some bandwagon
it went away
jumps.
with all those bad years, but then they were going to maybe move to St. Louis and all that. But once Parcells got here, football became important.
I remember being horrified that they might move to St. Louis, but also it was almost like pulling the comatose patient off the respirator.
Yeah.
It was like one of those, well, maybe they should move. Maybe we should just start over.
I don't know about where you grew up, but growing up in Sharon, everybody played basketball. That was the sport we all followed. That was the sport where our high school won a championship. And everybody was a Celtics fan, and no one ever wore Patriot stuff when I was in high school in the early 90s. I mean, we were going through the Hugh Millen years.
Right.
No one cared. Rod Russ, Dick McPherson. Give me a break. Now, this is the town next to Foxborough. Now it's all about football. This is, by the way, my chance to slip in and mention that Sharon won the Division III Super Bowl for the first time.
Oh, congratulations. I've covered a couple of those Division III Super Bowls. It's nice to have a Hockomock League team come out of there and take it.
Yeah, this is the first time Sharon had ever made the playoffs.
All right, so another thing, the DVOA rankings, which I love and I live my life by.
Thank you.
You have 2 11-1 teams ranked 7th and 10th overall. That has to be a first.
It's not a first, but But yeah, they are lower than people expect. A large part of it is opponent strength. Okay, Houston has had the 27th ranked schedule so far by our numbers. Atlanta has had the 31st ranked schedule so far by our numbers. Atlanta, I think, is really a myth. I'm really expecting them to lose in the second round of the playoffs. And I was somebody who really believed in them going into the season. But they have just escaped with close win after close win after close win over bad opponents.
I would say garbage. They've had at least 4 garbage wins.
They are
garbage.
They are 7-1 in games decided by a touchdown or less. So most of their wins have been close, and they have not been over good opponents. And they are generally a mediocre team, although their pass offense is better than their run offense, and their pass defense is better than their run defense. Houston, I think, is they are for real, and I think they're suffering a little bit because of the injuries on defense. And if they can get Joseph healthy and Brooks Reed healthy for the playoffs, I think they'll be better than they currently look in DVOA. And I do think that they are one of the forces to be reckoned with come playoff time.
I totally agree, and I think the underrated thing there is Andre Johnson is kind of back to being Andre Johnson again, which
surprises me because he started off slow, and he was at an age where you could see a decline perhaps starting, but no, he's been really good. One of the things that they could use would be one of those other receivers becoming a established threat rather than oh my God, Lestar-Jean caught one pass. That was nice for the last 5 weeks or whatever he's had. I mean, these aren't guys you worry about every week, DeVere Posey and whoever else they have.
The one thing, the red flag, just looking at your rankings, 31st special teams. And we know in the playoffs.
In one way it's a red flag because special teams often turn upsets.
Yep.
When you have a team that's better on special teams, because special teams, the big special teams plays are they really stand out. However, I mean, there have been plenty of teams that have gone all the way with bad special teams. Green Bay had terrible special teams a couple of years ago. Indy had awful special teams every year during the Peyton Manning era because they never, ever drafted well at the bottom of the draft, so their 5th and 6th rounders all got cut, and their special teams were terrible. So Houston can get away with the bad special teams. It could hurt them, though. I mean, especially when they have to play one of the really good special teams in the playoffs, like New England, which is second, or Baltimore, which has the best special teams we have ever tracked through 13 weeks.
That's what I was looking at. And, there is precedent sometimes. Like, I remember, oh, God, I hope I'm not wrong, but I remember when Seattle beat New Orleans in Seattle, and it was a huge upset, and really the only advantage they had in that game was special teams?
Yeah, basically. And I wrote, Hasselbeck handled a blitz well, and it was a Greg Williams defense that blitzed a lot, but special teams was also their other advantage,
But yeah,
Leon Washington.
But that is a great way for a heavy favorite in round 1 or round 2 to blow a playoff game by getting screwed over. In Pittsburgh 2001, Patriots. We won that game because of special teams.
Round, right?
Yeah. Hey, Chicago, you had them as, like, historically the greatest defense of all time 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's faltered a little bit.
Yeah, that's faltered, but, I mean, Russell Wilson was just driving on them. See, this makes me wonder, like, what the hell happened in those first 10 weeks with them?
Well, yeah, I wrote about it at the DVOA commentary on Football Outsiders. Yesterday, I actually put out on Twitter for people to say to me, what did they think was going on with Chicago? They still rank as the 6th best defense that we've ever tracked through 13 weeks, but they've definitely been average the last 3 weeks. Not bad, but average. And considering how well they were playing before that, it's somewhat of a surprise. I'll tell you, one of the really big differences is that they are really getting picked on passes to the left-hand side, and that is Charles Tillman's side.
Whoa.
Okay, and I know people always laugh at this theory, but he had a kid, which means he's not getting any sleep.
I love this theory. I was a major proponent of this theory. Yeah.
He only showed up on the injury report in week 12, and he was probable. So injuries aren't the huge issue for him. I wonder whether it's the baby, because he's really been struggling the last 3 weeks. And now, going forward, Chicago's going to struggle even more, because they're without Urlacher for the rest of the regular season. And Tim Jennings has his arm in a sling, so he's out for a couple games.
our resident Chicago Bears fan at Grantland, Baby Bear Robert Mays, he's been claiming Peppers has been hurt all season.
I had a
like
lot of
50%
readers
what he
yesterday
is.
when I tweeted. I had a lot of readers respond to me saying that Peppers has not played as well in recent weeks, that they feel that Peppers is not playing as well, and that the pass rush in general is not getting home the way it was when they were really, kicking ass the first 10 weeks.
Yeah, it seems like we always have a couple rabbit teams in the NFL that peak, sometime before Thanksgiving, and then it's over. And it does feel like the Bears are like that.
And injuries often have a lot to do with that. But the defensive injuries have generally been guys listed as probable for Chicago. So I don't know how much that's an issue, except that it's about to become an issue because of Urlacher and Jennings. But one of the theories was their defense is older, and that's why it'll decline in the second half of the season. But I went back and took a cursory glance at some of the oldest defenses the last 10 years, and none of them declined significantly in the second half of the season. So I don't know how much that theory bears fruit.
So we're thinking, I saw you have Denver as the second-ranked team, which kind of jibes with what I'm thinking. I mean, you have New England and Denver as the top two, and it does kind of feel that way watching these games. I would throw Houston in there, too, just because I think when Joseph comes back, I think that's going to be a nice, complete team. I just like that team. I think they're tough. But
yeah, I agree. I think that they are better than my numbers say once they get healthy, although Cushing is never coming back.
True. But, man, they had that brutal schedule stretch, and they got through it. Is it possible New England, Denver, and Houston are the three best teams right now?
I will say they are by far the three favorites to win the Super Bowl because they are so much better than the rest of the AFC.
Yeah.
Our Super Bowl odds basically give about a 50% chance that one of those three teams wins the Super Bowl. I think San Francisco and Seattle are up there in that mix.
So let me throw some teams at you really quick, and you just give me your quick takes on some of them, because usually this is around the time of the year when somebody gets hot, they run the slate, they go 7-8, they get all the momentum. Like, we know this happens every year. So is it safe to say Seattle is the best bet for that in the NFC?
In the NFC, actually,
Green
Bay's schedule, other than Chicago, does not end very difficult. And Washington's schedule doesn't end very difficult either.
You could talk me into the Redskins
this week.
Yeah, but don't you think the Redskins beat Baltimore this week? I mean, Baltimore's due to have somebody kick them.
We have them favored in our picks, yes.
So the Redskins have won 3 in a row, and they go Baltimore, at Cleveland, at Philly, home for Dallas. If they win this Baltimore game, that could be 7 in a row. Yeah,
I mean, I think that Seattle, San Francisco, I mean, that's a tough game for Seattle, right? So I think Washington and Green Bay may be better run the table bets.
All right, AFC.
Denver. Denver's schedule the rest of the way since mid-season. Denver's schedule for the second half of the season has been absurdly easy. They do get Baltimore, but the other 3 games are Oakland, Cleveland, and Kansas City.
Yeah, this is why I feel
they're going to lose the last one simply because everyone's going to rest.
Yeah, but don't you think if the Pats are going to lose either to Houston or San Francisco, I really doubt that they're going to win both of those games.
Yeah, I would say there's a good chance that they lose one of those games. They could win them both. They could win them both, and I doubt they lose them both.
Just think the Gronkowski-Edelman combo, losing that.
Yeah, but remember, Houston has all those injuries in the secondary.
I know, but
I think they're more likely to lose to San Francisco than to Houston.
And I know everybody back home is going nuts about Brandon Lloyd right now, but, he's been okay.
Guys disappear from the game plan for 3 weeks.
I agree.
They suddenly have 150 yards.
Greg Bedard did a good job of breaking it down today, but a lot of pressure on Brandon Lloyd in those 2 games because now he has to. It's basically him and Welker. Hernandez, their teams are
but he gets to go up against Kareem Jackson for a lot of this. I mean, I don't remember whether Houston is a team that takes its cornerback and follows the best receiver if they're a leave guys on side team. But I mean, Kareem Jackson, and I can't even remember who the other guy is because I think Alan Ball's injured and Bryce McCain's out for the rest of the year. I mean, Texans are really battered on defense right now. They're a much bigger danger for the Patriots in the playoffs than they are Monday night.
Well, here's what pisses me off. The Ravens, who are a garbage 9-3, just garbage. That's a 7-5 team. So they're going to lose to Washington this week probably, and they're probably going to lose in Cincinnati. And odds are they're going to be a 4 seed, which means they get the gift of playing the Colts. Meanwhile, the Pats are probably going to blow one of those 2 games. Denver is going to win out. They'll get the 2 seed. Now the Pats have to play Pittsburgh in round 1. That's going to be a really tough game. I don't want to play Pittsburgh in round 1.
No, that's going to be tough, but the Patriots are still better than Pittsburgh.
No, I know, but I don't want to play them.
It's been better in recent weeks, but it's only 11th in my ratings. It's not the defense that we remember as being great historically. It's had a down year, and their offense, even when Roethlisberger was healthy, was only like 11th or 12th. So I'm not too scared of that as a Patriots fan.
Yeah, but look at the alternative.
Pittsburgh's a team you respect, and I certainly am a lot more scared of them than I am Indianapolis. But I still think that it's going to be Denver, Houston, or New England. It's not going to be Baltimore or Pittsburgh.
The alternative for the Pats round 1 is either playing the Colts, which would be great because that terrible
come on for a story. Don't you want Colts at Broncos? I mean,
yeah, Colts Broncos would be fun, but I think the Broncos are going to get the 2 seed.
All right, in that case, yeah, Colts Ravens is not as it's fun for Baltimore people because they get to boo the Colts. But
I just think the Ravens, this breaks perfectly. This team, they get a 4 seed, they get the Colts in round 1. And then in round 2, they get to go to Houston, where we just talked about they have some advantages against Houston. That's a game they can absolutely win.
Yep.
And
nope,
and
right.
then all of a sudden, AFC Championship again, they come to New England, the one team that they really honestly feel like they could beat. And at that point, somehow Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs will be playing with torn triceps, which I'm still trying to figure out how anybody could play with torn triceps within 8 months of the injury.
To those guys and their desire to play and their interpersonal strength. But Baltimore is just not as good as the Patriots this year. It would just be, for them to beat Houston would be a major upset, but they could do it if they get special teams play, but they can't pull that on the Patriots likely because the Patriots are second in special teams. So I really think if that happens, Baltimore loses to Denver or to New England in the AFC Championship.
I think Flacco is probably my number 1 biggest disappointment this year. I actually bought into the hype. I even got him in my fantasy draft, and I don't feel like he's any better. I feel like Matt Ryan's gotten a little bit better.
I have. Ryan has gotten better this year, yes, although
Flacco did not.
He was better the first few weeks than he has been the last few weeks. It's hard for me to talk about Flacco because I feel this personal attachment to him.
Yeah.
Because Mike Tanier was his high school math teacher.
Oh, wow.
And we thought Flacco was going to be our little secret when he was coming out of college, and people thought he was like a 5th or a 4th round pick. And then between like December and April, he went from a 4th rounder to a 1st rounder, and then he wasn't our little secret anymore.
Yeah. He just did not take the leap that maybe we thought. And I guess the story of the year is that the guys that took the leap were the 3 rookie quarterbacks. I feel like Russell Wilson has to be thrown into that conversation.
It makes me feel better about our forecast system. When we came out with Russell Wilson with like the best forecast ever, we were a little scratching our heads going, well, is this accurate? But he's really good.
Is there, last question, then I know you have to go. Is there, give me like 1 or 2 teams that you just feel like stick a fork in them, they're done, pick against them every week, it's over for these teams?
Philadelphia? Am I the only one saying that? I think San Diego. I think
I agree
at
with
this
both.
point we're just running in place, waiting for it to end.
What about Oakland? Oakland now 31st in your rankings.
Oakland is a mess. You know what I'm not going to say, though? Carolina. I'm actually writing for Upset Watch for ESPN Insider this week. I'm writing Carolina and why they can beat Atlanta. And they have been ridiculously bad in close games. Now, a lot of that is Ron Rivera's game management, but at some point that has to break. At some point it has to break.
I totally agree and love Carolina this week, and that is just a classic. At some point these Atlanta's luck in these close games is going to backfire.
Here's an amazing stat. The Panthers in the last 2 years are 0-11 in games decided by less than a touchdown. So 6 points or less. But from 1990 to 2011, there were 7 different teams that were 0-5 or worse in those less than a touchdown games through week 13. in the last 4 weeks, those same teams were 8-2 in less than a touchdown games. That's not just regression towards the mean. That's kind of wacky and the reversal.
You have something to plug, right?
Yes, for those people who live in places where gambling is legal, and I only recommend to them, of course, Football Outsiders Premium, which includes picks against the spread every week, plus a very detailed historical database of our DVOA stats and expanded player pages on Football Outsiders, is only $16 through the end of February. It's our special end season premium special, and we are 57% against the spread this year. So
that
we're
makes
having
money.
Our best year. So come and enjoy it for $16.
57% is the ka-ching range. That's
That is
what Bob
pretty good
Valgaris. Bob Valgaris says if you go 57%, you can have a nice life for yourself.
So, and all I'm asking for is $16 so that you, person who lives in Canada or Nevada, can make a bunch of money.
Aaron Schatz, a pleasure as always. We will talk to you right before the playoffs, and keep up the great work.
Sounds good, man. Talk to you in a few weeks.
All right, coming up, Grantland, Zach Lowe talking about the NBA on Smart Guy Wednesday right after this.
Happy birthday, Barry, to you. It's the Subway Surprise Birthday Party. And to celebrate, Subway is baking up a fresh new cookie with real cranberries, blueberries, and sweet white chips. It's the new Birthday Berry Cookie. Try it today and all September long. Subway. Eat fresh.
All right, Smart Guy Wednesday continues with Grantland's NBA column. This is Zach Lowe. What's happening?
Not too much, man. How you doing?
You went to Oklahoma City, and who'd they play, the Knicks or the Nets? I get those two wacky New York teams confused now.
The Brooklyn Nets.
The Brooklyn Nets, yeah. No, I watched it. 112-106, I think, was the final, and it really does kind of seem like this Oklahoma City team is, I don't want to say rounding into championship shape, but at least like we've gotten over the hangover of the Harden trade and we're heading toward a distinct place. I feel like you agree.
Yeah, they're making progress. They're really good, and they got some things to sort out. The Nets made them look like it was Game 5 of the finals again, raining threes and mass confusion for a little bit of last night, and that was a little disturbing. But yeah, the Thunder are good. They're making progress, and in May they should be pretty damn good.
Andre Blatch actually got some minutes in that game.
Yeah, they were missing Brook Lopez and Reggie Evans, and Blatch did some things. He had a lot of points. He had a lot of rebounds. He had maybe the greatest move of his career, like 3 pump fakes in a row underneath, just fooled the entire Thunder team, and he laid it up and in. For cheap, he's been pretty good.
I'm disappointed the Celtics didn't get him, but I actually did some sniffing around on this, and apparently he's like one of Kevin Garnett's 3 least favorite players in the league, and there was just no chance whatsoever he was going to be a Celtic. But he's exactly the type of kind of energy rebounder front court guy that they need if in the perfect role. But Oklahoma City, would you agree? Harden once upon a time was the swing guy with this team, and now it feels like Ibaka has become kind of the swing guy of what their fortunes are from game to game. Do you think he is is he above where you thought he was going to be at this point?
I think it's actually funny. I think his improvement has been like more dramatic on offense than on defense. I think he's still a pretty good defensive player, but last night he was a little bit all over the place in a way that he was in the finals when things went to crap for them. Offensively, he's like, they'll post him up every once in a while. He has a face-up jumper now. They ran him off a pin down last night like he was Dirk Nowitzki. He attacked off the dribble and scored once or twice and threw some nice passes. Like they're stretching him out a little bit, and he's proving up to it. Defensively, he's still got some positioning issues, but he's pretty damn good on that end. So yeah, he's playing well, and he's a swing guy both on his own and in that he's sort of dependent on his teammates to get him good looks and to feed him the ball in the right places. And so his development is like dependent on Russell Westbrook becoming a better passer and KD becoming a better passer and all of that. And it's happening slowly but surely.
Yeah, it seems like the game plan for a few games there at least against them was give him that 16-footer, he won't make it. It was one of those deals. And then he started making it. And I don't know what the advanced numbers are, but it does seem like he's taking it right away. He's not thinking about it. And it actually looks nice when he shoots it. And maybe that's, if he's going to become a multiple All-Star, that's the shot. It's a little like the Blake Griffin thing. And Blake Griffin still never looks totally happy when he has to take that open 18-footer. But if you get to the point where you start making that consistently, it changes the level of your game. I wanted to ask you about Blake because the Clipper fans starting to freak out a little bit. He just hasn't gotten better since his breakout year 2 years ago. We're basically watching the same Blake Griffin. Is there a little bit of Larry Johnson potential here with this guy where he peaks as a rookie and then just the stats slowly start to peter out?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't share that sense of worry.
Okay, that's good.
He had a big game the other night when I caught them, and I'm blanking out on who it was. All these games start to blend together every once in a while, but I woke up early and watched one of their games, and he had a huge game. And, look, offensively, his jumper does look better. He's shooting the jumper well. And the thing is, he was already such a great offensive player that there isn't that much for him to do offensively other than make that jumper more consistently. He's got a good post game. Everyone thinks he has a bad post game. And I always tell people there aren't that many players who have a bad post game but somehow draw double teams in the post every time they get the ball. Like, coaches aren't dumb. They don't double team guys with bad post game. He's a good passer. He's becoming an okay mid-range shooter. To me, the growth has to come on defense, and it's him and DeAndre Jordan getting more consistent, being in the right place at the right time. And he has gotten better at that, and they hit, a slump after their really good start on defense. But I think on the whole, they're both better. But, the Clippers, I don't worry about their offense or Blake's post game or anything like that. I just worry about their ability to defend consistently and about Vinny making the right choices with his players.
Yeah, so his per 36 minute stats as a rookie is 21.3 points, 11.4 rebounds. This year he's 19 points and 9.6 rebounds. His PER year by year, 21.9 as his rookie year, 23.4 last year, which was really good, and then 19.5 this year. So I'm with you. I think it's too early to tell. I need to see more, and I think it's been a weird Clipper season to some degree. Vinny's playing 11 guys. I don't think anybody really knows how many minutes they're getting from night to night except for Chris Paul. I don't think anybody knows how they're going to finish the game. And from that standpoint, like, history says that's bad. If you don't really have a set plan from game to game, the players eventually they have trouble handling it. And, I think from a talent standpoint, they're top 3 or top 4 in the West. It would be pretty incredible if they didn't finish with a top 3 or top 4 record with no real injuries. Would you agree that they're a top 3 talent team in the West?
Oof. Well, given the fact that no one knows what the hell the Lakers are right now, that crosses one off the list.
Yep.
So that leaves the 4, Memphis, San Antonio, the Clippers, and the Thunder, and that's a pretty damn strong top 4. I mean, I guess you could argue they have more talent than Memphis. Memphis has a lot of talent, but
I would say they have more talent.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I think they have more talent than San Antonio. To me, you look at that San Antonio team, Ginobili, might be a little bit like watching Paul Pierce, where he just might be heading into a different phase of his career. And, they've really had to rely on Duncan a lot more than they have in recent years. Parker's Parker. Other than that, they don't have really anybody. It's all role players from that point on. And I think it's more of a Popovich, just the Popovich Duncan, just the continuity and the fact that they know who they are is their biggest advantage. I worry about that team long term though. Unless Ginobili can get back to being where he was, I'm not seeing it with them.
Yeah, no, I think Ginobili is the big issue, and his shooting is cold so far this year, and they really need. We saw what happened against the Thunder last year. They needed him to be a huge scorer every night, and he just wasn't able to do it. And if he can't do that, then they need some of those role players to sort of be better individually than they were last year, whether it's Kawhi Leonard or Danny Green being able to do just a little more stuff, or Tiago Splitter or somebody. So we'll see if they are. But I guess, in terms of comparing talent, like who's the third best player on the Clippers? Jamal Crawford? I don't think so, but...
Yeah, they'd have probably like 5 or 6 candidates. you could argue from a talent standpoint it's Bledsoe, and he's just not getting the minutes. But Bledsoe has been just destructive in his 19 minutes a game.
He is a force.
Yeah, no, and what's sad is Chauncey came back. He's got to play. Most respected guy on the team. I think they overrate how good he is just because they love him so much. But all that does is keep Bledsoe off the court when he's out there. And they play 3-guard probably more than any team in the league. I'm not sure that's, they've had games where they've played 3-guard, Matt Barnes, and Blake Griffin, and that's been their crunch time 5. I mean, they've been going small ball more than anybody. But I'm looking at Ginobili's stats right now. He had 24.1 PER last year. It was only 34 games, but he was always in the 22, 23 range. This year, 17.1. He's only shooting 40%. And, you and I are both Celtics fans, even though we're supposed to be objective. You're seeing the same thing with Paul Pierce, where the more I watch Paul Pierce, it's going to happen. You get older, at some point you have to move into a different phase of your career. And it's really hard for Paul Pierce to play consistently well every night. I think I feel the same way when I watch Ginobili. It's like at some point we knew this was going to happen, and maybe this is the year for both of those guys.
Yeah, and also, Pierce has changed the way he plays this year. He's coming off screens a lot more, and instead of working off the dribble or posting up in isolation, and you just don't know. I think part of that is because he's old, and Doc understands that he can't create his own shot as well. Part of that might just be, we're going to save the heavy lifting for the playoffs, assuming we get there with full health and all of that. And, but it does worry me watching the Celtics that Rondo just has to do everything creatively for them. Jet can do some of it here and there, but just Rondo has the ball all the time and has to do everything. And the idea of getting some of these young guys was to diversify a little bit. And it just, but on the other hand, their offense is playing pretty well, which no one expected. Their offense to be their stronger half, and they got to get the defense to come together.
And I don't see how they do. I'm coming to the sad realization that this Celtics team might have missed their window in 2010 and 2012 to a lesser degree. Defensively, it's just not the same. I don't know how you fix it. KG's off the court, and it feels like any team can score on them when he's not off the court. Even when he's on the court, it's not like they're locking teams down. Terry's, we knew he was a bad defender, but especially if you're relying on him, it's just you have a really negative defensive player as one of your 5 guys. Sullinger's not a good. It's tough, and the irony is the number 2 spot in the East is wide open. I don't think it's ever been more wide open than it is. And the distance between Miami and the rest of the teams in the East, to me, feels like just a chasm.
And you're saying this after a disastrous Miami loss on the road to the Wizards, right, which I think everyone already immediately agrees does not matter at all.
To me, don't you feel with Miami that whenever they want, they can win probably? And it all comes down to it's like an energy investment for them. How can they just get through the game without having to, kick it into 4th or 5th gear? LeBron had a really interesting quote in Sports Illustrated when he was saying how our goal is never to lose 2 in a row. I thought that was interesting. That is something to actually monitor. All right, they lost this Wizards game. Now let's see how they come out this game. But I just feel like their 5th gear is such a different gear than what everyone else has. I don't know if during an 82-game schedule how many times they can hit that 5th gear, though.
Yeah, and we have lots of evidence that teams with championship experience can flip the switch and just sort of turn it on when they need to. And Miami has proven itself, and they've proven themselves defensively. They were much better in the playoffs defensively against the 3 last year than they were in the regular season, when at times they look like they've looked already this season, just sort of giving up all these wide open shots. They've earned the benefit of the doubt with and clearly they should pace themselves. There's no reason for Dwayne Wade to bust his ass on defense for 82 games when they're going to be the number 1 seed, or at worst the number 2 seed, although I can't even see that happening. And then they just got to get through these 4 really tough playoff rounds. The one caveat is if they have injury problems, even like minor players like Shane Battier, he's not a minor player, he's a big player. They need to get those guys healthy to play the way that they want to play. So, yeah, Miami clearly has earned the benefit of the doubt.
And they're asking a couple taxing things from their players. LeBron, they're asking him to rebound more than he's ever had in his life. I think he's over 9 a game. Battier, and you've written about this in some of your posts, like they're asking Battier sometimes to guard power forwards down in the post and stuff, and that, you know, that's not his game, obviously. And then Bosch, they've basically turned into a de facto center, even though we don't really have any centers anymore. But the Memphis-Miami game a couple weeks ago was eye-opening. You know, you look at that and you think, this is where to beat a team like this, they have to be in fifth gear. I still feel like they're the team to beat. And, you know, I think they know who they are, too. I think they know what their identity is. I think they're very comfortable. Rays fit in to the chagrin of Celtics fans, especially at the end of games. How do you feel watching Ray at the end of these games? It hurts, doesn't it? It's like, oh, man.
You know, I admire your quality to maintain very strong fandom. The longer I do this, honestly, the more my fandom sort of fades. And it's true. I mean, like, I still sort of have that in me, and my dad roots for the Celtics, and that's cool. But, like, I even last year when they lost Game 7, I remember being like, I don't really care all that much. And watching Ray in Miami for me is sort of like a more analytical experience. Like, how are they using him? What lineups is he in? Where is he on the floor? Blah, 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 blah. It doesn't make me angry at all. And honestly, part of the reason for that, and this is going to be unpopular with you, part of the reason for that is just how, maybe I only see it because I used to be like this, but just how crazy Boston fans are. It just sort of, it drives me nuts. Like, if you say one critical thing about Jeff Green, just like the hate tweets that come at me every day. And, like, I'm accused of hating the Celtics all the time, and I want to be like, you just have no idea who you're talking to. Now, every fan base is like that, so maybe I just notice it more.
No, it's the cold weather. Fans. It's the cold weather cities that are like that.
That's true.
And the Laker fans. The Laker fans are insane. And the Laker fans are great because if you tweak them on Twitter, they just absolutely lose their mind. I enjoy it. The Laker fans, I think they have good fans actually, but they're irrational, especially right now. I do think the thing with Ray though is just that those 5 years and that whole era, and they won one title. They easily could have won two. They maybe even could have won three. And just what those guys had as a group. To see him on the biggest rival has been tough, and especially like how well he fits in with LeBron. LeBron is just immediately, it's like giving LeBron a new car. You know, hey, drive your Ray Allen car. Watch this. Hey, if you drive this way, his guy is going to stupidly leave him open in the corner, and then Ray's going to hit a three 100% of the time. This will be great. And I don't know.
Yeah, their offense is pretty awesome, and if they can play that way with LeBron at the 4 and Bosh at the 5 and shooters everywhere, it's going to be interesting to see if they run into an opponent like Memphis, if they just eventually just force that opponent out of their game and make them go small, or you know, if there's an opponent that can really test them. But the way their offense looks, and look, their defense has been bad. Ray is struggling, I think, at times to pick up the rotations, and Wade is lazy and all of that. But their offense is just lights out when it's going well.
Yeah, I agree. And they also, I'm sure they'll get somebody at some point to help out with their rebounder short. I think they know it. I like what they're doing because I think teams too often try to build the team that they're going to have in June 8 months earlier. You just don't need to do that. Every single year we know that guys are going to become available in January, February, and March that you can add to your team. So I think they know they're a work in progress. The advanced metrics crowd was big on the Denver Nuggets heading into this season. I remember, I can't remember, somebody, was it Hollinger picked them for like 55 wins or 58 wins? Like everybody seemed to think they were a top 3 team, and they just have not done it. Was this the first overanalyzed team that we've had in the NBA?
Oh, wow. I don't know about that, but yeah, look, I don't know if I'm a member of the Advanced Metrics Club or not. I don't know if I've been given membership or not, because I'm good at math, but I've never created a statistic, and, you know, I have to, like, study the underpinnings of them. But
I would say you use the numbers as well as anybody, so I think you're an honorary
use them,
member.
And I understand them, for sure.
Yeah.
I was not high on Denver. I was dubious of Denver as a real contender. In one of my predictions, I said I think they would rank in the bottom half of the league defensively. And they can't space the floor. I mean, they have no shooting. They can't, and they have major trouble spacing the floor. But what are they? A game under 500 or 500? Exactly. I can't remember which, but something like 2/3 maybe even more of their games have been on the road. They've had a horrible schedule. Gallo started off just ice cold and has been coming on a little bit lately. Lawson is still trying to find his game. Iguodala is trying to fit in. George Karl has no idea what he's going to get from his big men other than Fareed's rebounding on a night-to-night basis. And they're still a 500 team. And I think once the schedule turns in their favor, they're going to make a run at some point and be a good, solid team that can make some noise. But I just never bought them as a contender, and I still don't.
I don't like the team, and I actually think they are a 500 team. And I don't think it's a swoon. I just think they are who they are, and they have a couple real issues. Van Gundy mentioned one of them on Wednesday night because Ty Lawson wasn't having a good game, or he had disappeared for a few minutes. And Van Gundy said, when Ty Lawson disappears, this team can't win. And I'm thinking, well, that's a problem because Ty Lawson is not Chris Paul. He's going to disappear from time to time. And if you can't win when he disappears, then you need to reinvent who you are. And then the other issue, I can't remember who wrote this, but somebody was pointing out about Kenneth Fareed and how bad they are defensively if they play him at center. Because you look at them.
Me,
you go,
that was me.
Oh, that was you.
Me.
That was my boy, Zach Lowe. That was my boy. Yeah, so if they can't play Fareed at center, that's a real problem for this team.
Well, it's
because
funny. Fareed is like 6'6", and if you actually go by height, then in those lineups, then Gallo is the center. But either way, the point stands. I mean, he guards the center, and they're just too small.
Yeah, because as we mentioned earlier, we've seen the Clippers do this with Blake Griffin, where they go super small ball with Blake, and for some reason it hasn't totally murdered them. But if Denver has to play Fareed, who I think we both love. I love his energy. He's the kind of guy I wish the Celtics had. But if you can only play him with McGee, who is really, really hit or miss, and I think that contract is going to be one of the shaky contracts, or Kufas or whatever. Now all of a sudden Gallo's playing 3, then Iguodala's playing. It's just the pieces don't fit, which leads me to my next question. Why isn't this the logical team for the Pau Gasol trade? Iguodala for Gasol right now.
I think it is a logical team for a lot of trades. I think it's a logical Anderson Varejao trade, although Gasol is obviously a better player. I just, I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I know that Denver kicks the tires on everything and have probably thought of all of these hypotheticals. I just don't know that they're super interested in $19 million for Pau Gasol, and they'd have to send out something else in that trade because I think adding that $5 million would take them over the tax, and they don't want to go over the tax, or would take them right to it, or something like that. And they're budgeted for about where they are right now. Masai Ujiri has told me that. And I don't know if they're going to add that payroll. But, yeah, I mean, they are a really interesting trade team. And I think if Wilson Chandler were healthy and playing, he would be one of the more talked about players on the trade market because I don't think Denver really wants him. He has an interesting mid-sized contract that runs for 2 or 3 more years after this one. And they're just loaded on the wing, but he's not playing. He really hasn't played in the NBA in 2 years, and he just might not be that good. So if he were healthy, I think that would be sort of a game changer in terms of trade possibilities.
Gasol, here's the case against Gasol very quickly. Hasn't really been good in 2 years, and yet the stats all back it up, dating back to the 2011 playoffs. Doesn't rebound as well, doesn't get to the line like he did, doesn't score like he did. His field goal percentage is down. Any way you look at it, he hasn't really been the guy from the 2010 playoffs in 2 years. Now the case for Gasol, maybe they're using him wrong. Maybe maybe last year he had to share the Bynum thing. He's on the foul line. He's more of a passer. Maybe that's not the best way to use him. He's a low post guy. Same thing with this year, Dwight Howard. But I keep going back to the Olympics, right? That he's playing America. We had all of the good players in that game except for 2 of them. And Spain hung around in that game because of Pau Gasol, because we could not stop him on the low post. And that was only a couple months ago. So if I'm Denver and all I have to do is watch the gold medal game, that's why I trade for Pau Gasol. Do you agree?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say he was bad in the Olympics, and you were there,
No.
and I was going to say he destroyed the U.S. in the low post.
Killed us.
For the entire second half of that game while his brother was in foul trouble.
Killed us.
And, yeah. Look, I would be in a theoretical world, I would be a huge proponent of Denver getting Powell, because I mean Denver has such fatal spacing issues, and Powell is not a great shooter, but he's a good one, better than any of their big men by like leaps and bounds, and he can create spacing just with his passing. And right now Denver, I mean, you watch Denver creates space in the paint by having one of their guys stand out of bounds all the time. Like some teams do that a lot, but like Denver like leads the league in guys that are standing out of bounds to get the hell out of the way. And Powell would really help. And I just think $19 million, we have no idea what's going on with his knees. But, you know, I've written it before. I'm with you. I'm in the camp that Pau Gasol is still a really damn good player playing out of position. And this has been going on. I mean, this is why the Lamar Odom's demise or whatever the hell happened to Lamar Odom just killed multiple teams, including the Lakers, because he was the guy that allowed Pau Gasol to play center almost full time, or at least to split the center minutes with Bynum and theoretically, if he were still there, Dwight.
I think Pau's the center. I think Pau still has. He is the type of game that he should just be able to keep playing until his late 30s at a high level. You know, he's always going to be able to score in the low post. He's playing for a team that does not use him as a low post player and hasn't for 2 years. It's inexplicable. And if I was a GM, I would be going after him. Now let me throw this at you. Oh, you better sit down for this one. Paul Pierce for Pau Gasol.
Yeah, I can't even wrap my head around something like that. I mean, those two teams are not going to trade with each other.
Who says no?
Who says no? I mean, I don't know that the conversation ever starts, but I don't know who's going to score on the wing for Boston? I think Boston might be more apt to say no just because they have such a similar player already in KG. And that doesn't KG and Powell you could pair up and it would be like delightful and totally damaging and awesome.
I think it would be great. They'd be a great combo.
Yeah, it would be great, but it leaves them so barren in terms of scoring on the wing, and maybe it doesn't matter with those two guys. But I'm not saying that Paul Pierce is better than Pau Gasol. I actually would have to think about that pretty hard, but I don't know that makes maybe it does make sense, and it's just one of those things that will never happen for reasons that are beyond us.
Yeah, I don't think Wick would ever trade Paul Pierce. I think he retires as Celtic. But it would be an interesting trade that would solve some real issues for both teams. And you could argue Avery Bradley's coming back. The Celtics would just go 3-guard with KG and Paul and Pau and figure it out. The other trade I was thinking was Gallinari and Chandler for Gasol would be another one if you didn't want to do Iguodala. Because now you remember D'Antoni and Gallinari have that love affair from way back with the Knicks. So that could be interesting.
Yeah, it could be. You run the risk in all these trades of leaving the Lakers without a real power forward, and whether you care about that or not is up to everyone. You know, if Dwight is Dwight, maybe he can cover for things like, Rashard Lewis was only a pseudo power forward.
That's my thinking.
Orlando.
We saw Dwight succeed without a power forward in Orlando. He came very close to winning the 2009 title. Now, I don't know if Dwight's Dwight anymore. He might. In my opinion, he's 70%. I just don't think physically he's the same. Everybody says it's going to come back. We have no idea whether it's going to come back. We talked about this on an NBA Countdown internet clip we did. I don't know if it's going to come back. It never came back for Larry Johnson. Once you start talking about bad backs, you just don't know. So Lakers, you agree that it's just too early. I need to see Steve Nash. I'm not ready to judge this team for another month. How long would you wait?
That's the thing. It's like I watch these Lakers games. I don't watch every Lakers game because you just can't. But when I watch them, I'm sitting there and I'm like just reflexively like rewinding possessions, trying to figure out what's going on. Well, how are they doing this? How are they doing that? What's wrong with their defense? And then I just sort of think to myself, wait a second. Chris Duhon is playing 35 minutes in this game. Why do I care? This is not a real team right now. And so then I have this thing where this is just the fake Lakers. We got to figure it out and wait for Nash to come back and then really take the microscope to them. But, if Dwight is 70% of Dwight, then that's going to be a problem all year long. And that's a place that I think we can start looking and seeing, they've been really bad defensively their last two games. And Dwight has been a huge part of that.
And what's crazy is they're 8-10. But Kobe statistically is having his best season in a few years and is hitting threes like he hasn't really ever in his career. And it just looks quicker. I think losing that extra weight's helped him. But to be 8-10 when you're getting the best Kobe Bryant season probably in 4 years, that's not a great sign. I do think Nash is going to, the pace they're playing with is already so much faster, and they're doing that with Chris Duhon. So I think to say Nash is going to help would be an understatement. My question is, how long will it take Nash to get back to being Nash? I always worry about older guys with leg injuries. It just can take so much longer than you think. All right, you have to go.
My meeting was postponed.
Oh, your meeting was postponed.
But okay. we have a little more time if you want it.
Oh, we have a little more time. Knicks, Nets. Who goes further?
Knicks. Just have more faith in them as a two-way team than I do the Nets, although I think the Nets are very good. My worries about them are defense, which is no surprise. And, Joe Johnson has just looked sort of like, I don't want to say old, but old. I mean, he's just looked like he just hasn't found his place there, and he was really struggling last night when he had anyone his height on him. And he just, his PER, I think, is 13 or 12 points something. He's not shooting well. Yeah, this is a whole new team, so you got to give them half a season to at least figure it out, but he just hasn't looked good. And
Darren hasn't looked good if you're judging him by the other top 15 players in the league, which he's allegedly there. He hasn't been there again. He had a good game last night, but in general, now this is now the third season that we haven't seen him playing at the alleged top 10 level that he was, and I don't know. I wonder if maybe those days are just gone. I agree with you on Joe Johnson. To me, it's like you look at Pierce, you look at Manu, you look at Joe Johnson. I'd rather bet on Pau Gasol, maybe turning things around just because of the style of his game versus a perimeter guy. It's really tough for perimeter guys to regain that certain something after a certain age. Joe Johnson isn't that old though. I was
going to say, I think he's 30, and he has a good post-up game. These are the reasons why I'm not really fatally worried about him, because he's not in that age group, and he has a good post game, and he should be able to fit in. And I think he will eventually.
Quickly the Spurs and Stern and the whole. It's played out. Everybody's had their opinions on it at this point, but I do think the one part that I didn't feel like I got enough play was what is the ideal length for the schedule. And I hated two things about what Stern did, and I said this in the show on Friday night. One, the hypocrisy of cracking down on this specific thing, but then not doing anything about tanking year after year after year after year for 25 years, just allowing teams to throw away the last 6 weeks of the season for draft picks. And we saw it last year. Look at what Golden State did to get Harrison Barnes, and look at the difference in the drop off between Golden State at number 7 and Toronto at number 8. Toronto ended up with Terrence Ross, who's barely playing, and Harrison Barnes has had some real moments. He really looks like he's a genuine starter. And the league did nothing about that as that was happening. So that was one issue. The other issue is if you have an 82-game schedule, there's going to be 7 or 8 times a year where a team plays 4 games in 5 nights, and they're dead. And even the Vegas line shifts to reflect oh, yeah, this team's screwed. They're not going to play well tonight. What do you think the ideal length of the schedule should be? I'm
with you 100% on all these things in the league's sort of hypocrisy in handling the pop thing. And in terms of the schedule, I don't know. Kevin Arnovitz has pitched, I think, a 44-game schedule. That seems short to me, but I like the idea. I thought 66 or 65, or it has to be an even number, but I thought last year's length was good. The compression was obviously bad, and if you wanted to spread, the 66 or 60 games over the current stretch of the season, I think that would work. I do think there is value in scarcity in having fewer games and having them all mean a little bit more. And I think all the creative thinkers in the NBA are really excited for Adam Silver to take over, because Adam Silver is a creative thinker and is open to at least talking about a lot of this stuff, and the whole, well, we've always done it that way, it doesn't really fly with him. So there's a lot of excitement that over the next, and it's going to be a while, he has to settle into the job and all that, but over the next 10 or 15 years, that there'll be talk about that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I actually think it might be sooner than that. for me, I've written about this. The ideal length for me is 72 games, and then have some sort of midseason something to break it up, create some sort of tournament or whatever you need to do to break up the season, but also have some value toward the middle of the season. If you were just talking conventionally how many games, like no other tweaks or anything, 75 seems totally fair to me. You lose 7 games, and in every case it would be the 4 games and 5 nights game, which, now you have less injuries. To me, it's like just see the forest through the trees here, NBA. Like, if you're going to make these guys play 82 games and play these ridiculous 4 and 5 nights things, those guys are going to get hurt. And then if your whole worry is, we're going to lose games, or like even what happened with the Spurs, like those fans came to see Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and they didn't get to see them. Well, that's what's also going to happen when those guys get hurt, and their job should be to protect the players and get the best possible physical performance from these guys. And that's the part that they don't give a crap about. And that's why I think they're hypocritical.
There are only 2 arguments against a shorter schedule, really. Number one is money, and the fear that the league can't make as much money from ticket sales or whatever. And no one knows if that's true or not. Maybe the TV deal becomes much more lucrative than it is now. If every game attracts more ratings or whatever. And the other is, we've always had 82 games. What about all the records and statistics? Like, Kobe's about to pass 30,000 points, and like no one cares.
Yep.
You see stories about it, but like, who has 30,000 points? I don't know. Kobe does, I guess, now soon. No one cares.
The only record that people might care about is the 72 wins for Chicago. In terms of individual records, nobody cares. I mean, the things that people would care about are per game averages, which wouldn't change anyway if you went to 75 games. I think the league, I was embarrassed by how Stern handled that whole thing, and it goes back to the whole, the narrative of just the guy who should have left 2 years early and instead hung on for 3 years too late. My read of that situation was he got mad that Popovich did what he did. He felt like Popovich was deliberately waving a middle finger at him, which I think he was. And, I think the timing of how they announced it, not giving anybody a heads up, I just think it made Stern mad. And he released that statement when really nobody was mad about this. There was no outrage on social media that the Spurs had decided to rest guys. I think basketball fans are pretty smart, and they had Memphis on Saturday night, and I was fine with it. It was like, yeah, why would you play those guys in a 4-game 5-night if you could rest them? It's a marathon, not a sprint. But I thought he just pigeonholed himself into, once he gave that statement, then he had to do something, and then it became a bigger deal than it was.
That's why it would have been so much fun had they won.
Oh, God. God forbid they won that game. Ugh. And, I also think from what I heard, Popovich was really upset about last year's schedule and 66 games in that short amount of time and what a detriment that was to an older team. And even if it didn't affect the Spurs that much, they still had a good season. But you could argue when Oklahoma City ran them off the floor in those last 4 games, could that have been because they were playing a playoff game every other night and they just kind of petered out? I do think that was a deliberate FU by him to Stern, though. No question. He's like, I have 4 titles, F you. Do something. Fine us. I don't care. I'm making a point. The schedule is ridiculous. And that's why he did it.
We all know Stern's temper is legendary, and I would agree with you that Pop deliberately tweaked him and got the response that he was anticipating.
Right. And now, it's going to be interesting to see what happens the next time they hit a schedule point where he might think that maybe he should do this, and now do you just fake injuries? Because we know that you could say any player on your team has tendinitis at any point. Anybody over 30, you say, yeah, he's got tendinitis. So tendinitis will become the new excuse. Then how does the league even govern that? Somebody smart said to me, the problem with what Stern did is he's enforcing a rule that you can't enforce, because now anybody can say anything. And now you're just basically saying to teams, just lie. Don't tell the truth, just lie. And that's what's going to happen from now on. And I think Popovich, the next time around, will have fake excuses for injuries, but he's going to do it again. But yeah, I think the overall theme here is that it's time for a new commissioner, and I really wish that that February 2014. I wish it was February 2013 when the change was going to happen. I think it's going to be rocky these last 15 months. What did we not cover here? Should we cover, is there any surprise team that you've found yourself infatuated by?
Surprise team.
We weren't surprised by the Hawks.
No. I was talking to some people with the Hawks yesterday about whether we should be surprised and all of this. They got some tough games coming up, so we'll see how they do. But I'm not surprised by the Hawks. I was surprised how good the Knicks looked for their first 12 to 13 games. Surprised Minnesota hung in when all those injuries hit them. I'm not surprised how horrible Michael Beasley has looked.
Right.
I'm sort of surprised. The Warriors playing defense and really sort of gutting it out with elbow get is semi-surprising. Those would be the ones.
Yeah, I would say Atlanta doing as well as they've done, really not getting a good Josh Smith season. I was a little surprised by. Golden State, I have no idea how they're winning these games, but when you watch them, they have shooters, and it seems like they just can always get one guy hot at any given time. I'm surprised. This is who we should have talked about. I blew it. Larry Sanders. Larry Sanders has been probably the biggest shocker to me. Like watching him like a pogo stick just destroy the Celtics on Saturday night. Kind of like this Milwaukee team, and if Monte Ellis was playing better, they might actually be like a 4 or 5 seed. Would you agree that's a surprise?
Well, yeah, but if Monte Ellis is playing better is something that people have been saying for
True, for
7
5
years.
Yeah.
No, they're super entertaining. They have this army of like crazy long-armed freak guys led by Larry Sanders, who is maybe the most entertaining player in the league other than LeBron, just because he's a crazy person. I mean, he blocks he's blocking like 8 shots a game. He fouls everything in sight. He tried to fight the entire Pacers team last year and is always like, I think he's already been ejected once this year. He's always like on the edge of like a total uncontrollable outburst. I'm not sure they're really any good, especially since Ersan Ilyasova apparently passed away over the summer, but I just, they're certainly fun to watch.
Yeah, if Ilyasova was even 40% of what he was last year, it would have been pretty interesting. I'm kind of quietly a member of the Ekpe Udo role player fan club. I don't think if he's your 9th man, it's not the worst thing in the world. They won that trade, in my opinion, just because Bogut was just such a health risk, and we're seeing it now, and he might have to get another ankle surgery. They were able to dump Steven Jackson's contract in that trade. I think they clearly won that trade, even if Monte's not playing well. You could talk me into them being a dark horse for a Pau Gasol trade. I think he'd probably never show up. I think he'd just move back to Spain. But they are the kind. If the Lakers wanted to make a $1 for 4 quarters type trade, that's a team that would line up.
This is one. The last quick thing I'll say is that if Ilyasova were playing well, that would be the most talked about trade rumor. I think a deal built around Ilyasova. That's the one that I've heard most in league circles that I talk to, is like, wouldn't that if he was playing well, you package him and whoever, it's perfect and blah blah. And the other sort of addendum is like everyone is throwing these like fanciful Lakers trade ideas out, like, oh, what if they took Eric Gordon? Could they get Ryan Anderson and blah blah blah? Just remember that Jim Buss and all of them have talked about all that cap space they'll have after next season, and like I don't know that they're super interested in tying it all up in Eric Gordon or unproven players, and that's something to consider, which is why Iguodala does make some sense.
Yeah, and it's amazing that we had Eric Gordon get a max contract and might not play again this season, and really hasn't. He's kind of like an Andrew Bynum for guards with how many games he plays per year. It is that there's been some buyer's remorse, I think. I wasn't expected for the buyer's remorse that we've had, and I think you and I both think Philly should have done that trade for Bynum. I think he'd do that trade 100 times out of 100, but it couldn't have worked out worse. And he really might not play. I mean, this will be the last question, and we'll go. Would you think about trading Bynum if you were the Sixers?
I mean, I don't know that they could get anything quality in return for him right now. I mean, I don't know what they could get in return for him. It would be one of the craziest trades ever, especially if he doesn't play, because the team that gets him at least gets his bird rights, and you get some control over things that way. Not a lot for a free agent that's going to make a lot of money, but like we don't know if he's going to play again this year, next year. We don't know what he's worth. What could they get for him? I don't know that they could get a guy that's good enough to really justify just giving up on the trade already.
Oh, there's one team that would think about it. Actually, there's two, because Darryl doesn't have the contracts, but he'd try to figure out. But what about Dallas?
I mean, what do they
have? All the expirings. They just give him some expirings. Here's some expirings. We'll save you some money.
But Bynum's an expiring.
Right. So you give him like Chris Kaman and I don't know, Darren Holiday, whatever. You save the Sixers $3 million in salaries. You give them another $3 million. You make it financially worth their while. They cut the cord. They don't have to have the Bynum thing hanging over their head anymore. And then Cuban puts himself in the position of deciding whether I'm keeping my eye on Cuban with Bynum.
I think I think that would make sense for Dallas in a world where they don't care about pissing the hell out of Dirk Nowitzki for another year or for the rest of the season. Not that they look like they're really going anywhere now. But I just don't think it makes any sense for Philly to take a bunch of expirings. I mean, what's the ceiling for them? They're going to get the 6th seed and lose in the first round and have totally given up on Bynum already. They would have to swallow real hard to do something like that.
Unless they thought he wasn't coming back.
Yeah, I mean, sure. If he gives them an indication, I'm leaving no matter what, then you take your $3 million in cap savings and whatever cash Dallas can send along and pocket it, I guess.
By the way, Cuban's smartest move right now would be to totally sabotage and pour gasoline on the Dwight Howard Kobe fire. Really, their best chance to be competitive again is that this Lakers thing goes terribly. Because if it does, they're like the girl who's expressed interest in somebody else's boyfriend, but they don't want to make a move out of respect. But as soon as it goes wrong, they're sitting there waiting to hook up with them. That's Dallas right now. They're waiting.
Yeah, they're waiting. I mean, we'll see what happens. They were waiting last summer too, and it didn't work out so well. But they're there, and everyone loves. I mean, look, players love Dallas. They love the atmosphere and the taxes, the amenities, and Cuban and all that.
And the taxes.
Yeah.
I would say, like, if you were building out a scenario preseason, like, all right, sketch out exactly what would have to go wrong with the Lakers for Dwight Howard to end up in Dallas. We would have sketched out everything that just happened in the first 18 games. I mean, I don't know if the momentum will keep going, but we are on pace for the Dwight Howard Dallas trip.
Except we're missing one thing. Lakers hire Stan Van Gundy instead of Mike D'Antoni. That would have been the greatest thing that ever happened to the NBA. Obviously, it had no chance of ever happening, but it would have been the greatest thing ever.
I would have loved it. I thought you were going to say Artest Melee 2.
Oh, God. Nobody wants to see that. Come on.
If you could promise me nobody would get hurt, I maybe would kind of want to see that. It was still one of my favorite TV moments of all time. Zach Lowe, keep cranking it out. Everybody loves your stuff. We love having you. We will check out Zach's Grantland piece today about the Thunder, and then yesterday his Tuesday column, which has become a signature column. You defended Vince Carter. People thought I was asleep at the wheel and that I didn't know about it. We actually had discussed it in email. I was okay with the column. The Toronto fans were upset that I condoned it. But
yeah, I've been told not to come back to Canada, which is a problem because my wife is Canadian and her family is Canadian. But
all right, we'll hit it.
I was told it brought out the worst in Canadians, who are normally a very nice people.
And you know what? I defend their hatred for Vince Carter 100% because I went to a couple games when he was mailing it in to degrees we've never seen on a basketball court this century.
He was really bad. He was disgraceful for sure.
He was disgraceful. He was an absolute disgrace. And, you mentioned that in the piece, though, which I thought was fair. Zach Lowe, thanks for the time, as always.
Have fun, man.
So I get the sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.